Okay, so now we're ready to start talking about loops. And this is a common programming construct. Basically, with loops, you accomplish repetition in a program. So there are different styles of loops. Most languages have different, types of loops with different syntax, depending on what you want to do. So I think in this first program, I'm just going to run through a few techniques, and then we'll, dive into some more specifically in later videos. So let's start with what we call user-controlled repetition. Okay, so let's say that I just opened a bag of pretzels. I have a pretzel emoji here, okay, which is called pretzel. And then I'm going to say, just like put programming out of your mind for a minute. Imagine us sitting together and I just opened a bag of pretzels and I say, want a pretzel? And you say, sure. And I hand you one and you eat it. And then I say, would you like another? And you say, sure. And I hand you one and you eat it. This is repetitive action. And we can keep doing this and keep doing this until, you get full or the pretzels run out or something. So that's what we would call user-controlled repetition, because you are in control. This repetitive action is going to keep going on and on until you decide, no thanks, I've had enough, and then we stop. We're like thrown out of the loop, the behavioral loop. Another example of user-controlled repetition is like somebody playing a video game, and eventually the character dies or the game ends, and it's like, do you want to play again? Yes or no? At which point you can reset the game and start again. And you're kind of like in this looping behavior until you've had enough and it's time to go to sleep or whatever. So anyway, I'm getting the user's response in a response variable. We'll say that the user is going to be answering Y or N for yes or no. And then now we're going to dive into the loop. Okay, this is what we call a while loop. A lot of languages have a while loop, as well as in other styles of loops, but for now we'll focus on the while loop. So while the response is equal to, remember that double equal sign we talked about in earlier units? While the response is equal to little y, and you know what, I slapped a lower method on this, just in case they have their caps lock key on, they enter capital Y. This will just squash it down to lowercase, so I don't have to worry about case sensitivity. So while they keep saying yes, they'd like a pretzel, I'm going to print the pretzel. Okay, and then I'm going to ask them if they want another. Okay, so this is going to cause that looping behavior, but I have to give them a way out. Do you want another? Yes or no? Yes or no? Yes or no? There's always that possibility that they can be like, no, I'm done. And that's what ends the loop. So let's run that. Okay, I'm going to say yes. There's a pretzel. Yes, I'd like another pretzel. Yes, I'd like another, and so on. No, I'm done, thanks. And now the loop ends. So that's user-controlled repetition. Let's comment this out. And we're going to look at another technique, which is counter-controlled repetition. Let me okay. This is counter-controlled repetition. So we're going to pretend that we own a pretzel factory and we want to give the user 5,000 pretzels. Okay, you get 5,000 pretzels. This is different from the previous example. This is like there's a set number. It's 5,000. That's a number of pretzels we're going to give away, one at a time, and when it's over, it's over. When they run out, it's over. Okay. So this is not subject to the user's whims. This is 5,000 pretzels, period. Okay. So this is what we call counter-controlled repetition. The counter-controlled loop typically goes a set number of times. All right. So first we're going to start with a counter variable. Now you can call this anything you want. It's just a variable. You name it. Okay, I called it count in this case just to make it really obvious that that's the counter variable. I'm going to start counting at 1 because, most normal humans start counting at 1. As a programmer, you're kind of no longer a normal human, but we'll start counting at 1 for now. That's going to change later. So we have our while loop. Now, while count is less than or equal to 5,000. while we're still less than or equal to 5,000, I'm going to print a pretzel. And then I'm going to increment count. So like imagine the real world version of this where we literally have 5,000 pretzels in front of us, like in a big vat or something, and we're handing them to a person one by one, and I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're going to keep doing that repetitive motion until I reach 5,000, okay? And at which point it's like, okay, there's your last pretzel, we're done. And so that's really what's going on here. So while count is still less than or equal, and you're doing this in your head, like as you're counting, as you're handing out the pretzels, like in our real life scenario, you're thinking, am I still less than or equal to 5,000? Have I reached 5,000 yet? Am I still less than 5,000? And you're doing this in your mind, like knowing that you still have more pretzels to give because you haven't reached 5,000 yet. So that's what the loop is doing. Okay. And then very importantly, you have to increment. We'll talk about that. Let me run that. Okay, I'm gonna skip, that was the, oh, what is this? Oh, okay, so that was from the previous example. So there are the 5,000 pretzels. I don't know if I've talked about this before in another video, but sometimes, especially when you're printing a lot of emojis, online GDB will like drop the ball on some emojis. That's fine. It's nothing that you did wrong. It just, like, they just get lost in the shuffle when all this, online GDB is on the cloud. This is going over the internet. So don't worry about that when you get those. So I have my 5,000 pretzels. Just a quick FYI. I don't know if I've always ever talked about this technique, but this end, yeah, I think I probably did mention this early on in another video. I have the end character equals a space. You see that there? Watch what happens when I take that out. I don't get, the print by default has a line feed contained in it. So if you don't want a new line for each pretzel, you have to say, oh, override the line feed at the end and make the end character just a space instead of a line feed, and that keeps it on the right line. And then just another thing I want to talk about, what if I get rid of this? This is a common mistake. I'm going to comment out that increment statement. Watch what happens. Here are the pretzels. This is way more than 5,000. Okay. What I've done here is I put myself in an infinite loop. So like, for example, this is a relational expression, and we talked about these in our branching unit. This will evaluate to true or false. If it evaluates to true, we get another iteration of the loop, or another repetition of the loop. Okay. And then finally, when it becomes false, the loop ends. If I'm not incrementing the counter variable, it's staying at 1. Is 1 less than or equal to 5,000? Yes, that's true. So I just get another pretzel and another pretzel, and its count is staying at 1. 1 is always going to be less than or equal to 5,000 till the end of time. So, this is an infinite loop. It's a common mistake to forget that increment. So just be mindful of that. It'll be really obvious when you throw yourself into an infinite loop. And then you have to stop if you're an online GDB, you have to stop it explicitly up here. Okay, so be careful of that. And then one more thing I want to mention in this video is that indentation matters in Python. So when you're looping, when you're coding your loops, typically you will tab in, okay, and then everything's got to be flush as far as the margin goes in your loop. Anything that is flush here belongs to the loop, okay? So just be mindful of that.